system programming, digital and image processing, embedded processor architecture, RTOs, IoT, FPGA based system design, etc. Not only theory, we have lab integrated theory courses wherein they will have lot of hands-on experience. Our students also learn advanced topics in machine learning, embedded systems for robotics, smart grid, automotive application, biomedical instrumentation, and so on. Having curriculum designed in such a way that since they get to have a hands-on experience, our students get placed, they get lot of opportunity for internship as well as placements. To name few companies where our students are placed are Volvo, Synopsys, Tejas, Autoliv, ABB, Nokia, Robert Bosch, and so on. Moving on to the program MTech in Power Electronic and Drives, our curriculum is designed in such a way that the students will get to learn, they will learn to design power converters for renewable energy applications, for electric drives, and also they learn a lot of programming using embedded controllers, which are very much essential for current power industry. They also get to learn advanced topics in digital signal processor and embedded controllers. Not only in the MTech, students are encouraged to do research. Further, we motivate them to do PhD as we have integrated MTech and PhD program. The major research focus of our departments are power quality, STATCOM, and hybrid fax controllers. We also work on induction motor drives, sensorless vector control of drives, and hybrid energy systems, microgrid management and smart grids, embedded controller for power electronics and devices, control and coordination of aerial robots, smart devices using smart techniques, reconfigurable system design and implementation of FPGA and ASIC. With this brief introduction, I welcome you all. I request Ms. Nitya ma'am to take over.
Good evening all. Before starting the session, we are really honored and happy to invite our speaker, Mr. Vijayalayan, Manager of Automotive Application Engineering Team, MathWorks India Private Limited. Mr. Vijayalayan currently manages the Automotive Industry Field Application Engineering and Control Design Verticals Application Engineering in MathWorks India Private Limited. He specializes in the field of model-based calibration, electrification, full vehicle modeling, and model-based design. He and his team members closely work with automotive OEMs and Tier 1 suppliers in adopting model-based design. Prior joining to MathWorks, Vijayalayan was a team lead in the Embedded Systems Group of Cranes Software International Limited and worked as a Scientist B in the Gas Turbine Research Establishment, DRDO. He has around 18 years of industry and academic experience. Vijayalayan holds a bachelor degree from Mannoenmaniam Sundaranagar University and a master's degree in control and instrumentation from IIT Madras. Thank you, Vijay, for accepting our invite amidst your busy schedule. Now let me hand over the session to Mr. Vijayalayan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
So good evening, everyone. And firstly, let me thank the faculties of EEE department and the organizers of this webinar from Amrita University for giving me an opportunity to present on behind today's trends in automotive embedded controls, technology behind the challenges. Just one minute. So you are all able to see my slides, right?
Yes, sir.
So thanks for the welcome, Nitya. So this is so as introduced, I am Vijayalayan and I manage the automotive industry field application engineering in MathWorks India. Today's presentation is going to be mainly behind today's trends in automotive embedded controls. This is based on my experience in working with automotive organizations over the last 18 years. It's quite fortunate to have, like, I'm able to continue my career in the field of modeling and simulation. So most of the things from the time I graduated till now, how did this embedded controls evolved over the years? And now as a student community and also as a faculties, what are the opportunities for you in areas of, from mainly looking from an industry point and also from an education point, what are the opportunities which you can expect in the next 10 years? So with that, if you really look around you right now, there are a lot of technological disruptions happening in it, right? So the first one, most of you will be able to connect with, it's not automotive, but it is aerospace, what we call it as a SpaceX. Right now, Tesla.
వాడు పెట్టేశాడే
Yeah, for the participants, if you are on mute, it will be helpful for the, so that there is no disturbance for others. Please. Sorry, I think I was muted. Okay, I just realized I was in mute. Sorry, I'll start back from where I'll, just for the benefit of the audience. Sorry about that inconvenience. So what I was trying to say there is, there are a lot of technological disruptions happening around us, be it in the field of aerospace or automotive or consumer appliances. So what's happening is systems are becoming smarter. What do we mean by smarter systems is we are translating the intelligence from the humans into the systems and making it more and more intelligence. They can think and act by themselves. So what are the features of a smarter systems? If you look at it, it's more adaptive versus passive. So it's not just programmed to do what it is supposed to do. It can also watch out for the changes that's happening in the environment and quickly take decisions. And also, how can we reduce the human in the loop, whether it is medical or even in service domains or drone deliveries? How can we make it more autonomous? So that autonomous itself is a bigger trend that's happening into it. And one more key feature, it's no more individual feature or a function of that system. It has to be more collaborative. How can each system talk to each other, like something like the Internet of Things or one car talking to others? So there seems to be a lot of collaboration. One example is the number of robots in a assembly plant which has to cooperate and collaborate with each other to perform tasks. The last thing is, it's no more single function, it's all going to be multi-functions. So more the functions, it's going to say like how are we like how do we program these kind of a multiple functions is what we are going to look at, right? So this is what generally is the key features of the smarter systems. What it is leading to, the trend is basically algorithms in everything. When we say key features of smarter systems, it's nothing but algorithms. and we are going to be surrounded by systems everywhere where it is going to be algorithms. So be it in your phone, or be it is in your car, be it in your desktops, it's going to be a lot of algorithms. And it is not only algorithms in everything, algorithms everywhere. So what will be the new dimension or a new trend that you are going to see will be creating these algorithms will be the new literacy. So this is one word you can, or one phrase you can remember after this webinar. Creating algorithms is the new literacy. Is it more easier? No. There are a lot of challenges involved into it. So that is what we are going to see in today's webinar. Rather than spreading thin with multiple applications, I have confined myself to automotive industry. So most of the examples I will be picking is on the automotive applications. But what I would like to start with will be like, how did these embedded systems evolve in automotive industry, and what is the role of software? So that is, it will be good to always go back to history. Once you know the history, you will be able to connect back why certain things evolved and what is the importance of that when we are going to study and when we are going to apply that particular concepts in our applications, right? So next, after doing that, I'll quickly look at the challenges. Along with opportunities always comes challenges. So how do we address these particular key challenges that is faced in developing the embedded system? So that is where I would like to spend uh, quite a short time on the modeling and simulation, what we call it as a model-based design, a simulation-based approach. Why did it rise, and what is the importance of this simulation-based approach in the automotive embedded systems? And after that, quickly we will go through just looking at what's the opportunities ahead for industry and education. So this will be more from industry perspective, what is industry expecting from academia, and how as academia we can support the needs of the industry. And finally, I'll be happy to take your question and answers that you post on the chat. And with that, we will be concluding the webinar. Okay, so without wasting much time, if you look at the automotive industry, I'm just picking two examples, a 2008 model of a BMW and a 2012 model of a BMW. So what is happening is, in the automotive industry, the vehicle development cycle is reducing, it's shrinking. But along with that, in a reduced development time, the expectations of the consumers are going higher and higher. So the biggest challenge before the automotive engineers is, how do we cater to the increasing expectations of consumers, meeting the emission regulations, but at the same time also meet the shorter development time. So if you look at it, some of the design complexity is coming. The newer versions, they want a shorter engine, a smaller engine, but a same kind of a power or a higher power. So, and with more features. When I say more features, it's more about you want telematics, you want connectivity, you want user-friendly infotainment. So a lot of things gets added into it. So what basically it is going to add is, all these things are possible with adding more of with the role of the embedded software. So embedded software is becoming a key to the automotive innovations. So what we can look at is, it will be good to just date back, like how, when did this particular automotive electronics evolved, and what is the significance behind it. So if you look at it, it's 3 decades when the automotive embedded system started evolving. The origin was initially in catalytic converter, which we call it as a in engine segment. So mainly in the engines is where the electronics started. Otherwise, it was full of mechanical, and that's where the injection systems became electronically controlled. And once people realized the importance of software and the electronics in automotive, it slowly got into the next domain, which we call it as, from powertrain, it went into chassis and safety. So that is where, whether it is anti-lock braking system or electric power steering, or today lane keep assist, it's slowly getting expanded its adoption into the other domains of the automotive vehicle. The third one is, once this is done, from there it got into certain comfort and convenience, which we call it as a electrical and electronics of the car, where it is more around body control modules, infotainment. So that is what it becomes. These are all nothing but the systems present in the vehicle. So is it only automotive electronics is only prevalent in only the systems inside the car? No. Now what happened is entire vehicle development also that the increased role of software has become very high. So right now you can see here we are seeing more of becoming electrified and automated. So that increases the complexity of the electronics. So one way to look at is to just look at this was the automobile of sorry. So this is what is automobile of yesterday, where it was more about only the main functions were around powertrain, and slowly it expanded its penetration into other systems. And now, if you look at it, you have close to around 70 to 80 functions in a car. What is it significant? What it is implying? We'll see that shortly. And what is the future mobility going to look at? You see here that's already automated driving has come into picture. When we talk about automated driving, it will be different levels of automation. I think in the cars that we are driving today itself, we can see like drive assist systems coming into picture in the Western countries, and also in India, we have already seen like L4 and L5, which we see higher levels of automations driving the industries. That is a technology which is disrupting the automotive world, but a lot of research happening into it. It's more opportunities for research. We'll look at it in the upcoming slides. The other main trend in automotive is on the vehicle electrification. We are right now moving from a conventional powertrain to a electrified powertrain. So to mainly to cater to the needs of the environment and also the government regulations. So there we are seeing more and more of software coming into picture. There is a need for the charging infrastructure and also developing electrified vehicles. And the biggest trend that is also not only in automotive that is driving other industries is on data analytics. We are surrounded by millions of data, terabytes of data. What are we doing with that particular data? How do we get intelligence from the data to make our system smarter? And how can we deploy this? So that is where, as the embedded systems, how can we be ready for deploying these algorithms into the embedded systems? What is needed and what are the challenges? We'll be looking into that. Okay, so this is all what's happening and what is the evolution that has been so far from 1970 to till date, maybe 5 decades. So what happened is, right now we are, as I said, it's algorithms in everything. So whether it is a modern cars, will have like close to 70 to 100 processors. When I say processor, it's nothing but electronic control units, or in automotive term, it's called as ECUs. So you'll have close to 70 to 100, and number of lines of code has become like 100 million lines of code, which is huge. And that's where the challenge comes. And to put the algorithms in everything, manual coding alone is not enough into it. So that is the biggest transformation that happened. Okay. So what happened is, what is the challenges of manual coding from an industry perspective? What I'm trying to talk is all from industry perspective. One caution I would like to give to the student community here is, even though I'm going to introduce you advanced technology like automatic code generation, you should never compromise on the fundamentals of engineering. Okay, that will be my biggest advice, where you should be strong in fundamentals, and the tools I'm going to introduce, the technology I'll be introducing, that are like a smart assets with you. If you have watched Mahabharata, it's like Brahmastra or any kind of a special weapons for you. You should use it only when needed. You should not use it at the first instance. Okay, that's this I will be always emphasizing again and again. But now coming back to the story here, what are the challenges of manual coding? It's basically 100 millions of lines of code, which is not easier to manually verify. If there is a mistake in the code, how do I verify that this code is good? What will 1,000 lines of code do? How does that impact the other 1,000 is another question. And the code that has been written, it is the best. Is this the best system? Is there a scope for further optimization or improving it? Can we could have been done this in a 70 million lines, because again 100 million lines means you need more memory space. You should go for a larger architecture of embedded system, which will result in cost, and which will improve, which will also impact your vehicle cost. So all these things will come into picture when we are looking from an industry point of view. And how did we test all the 100 million lines of code so that there is no error? What if it is error? That is where we are seeing a lot of recalls in the industry. Recalls impact the brand of the organization, and that is the most important thing. The quality of the vehicle and system is what industry pays more attention to it. So this is what will be a common challenges which will happen. And the last thing is, whatever I'm developing can be reused for the next project, right? So this is the traditional approach which used to be there, where it is like more start with the requirements, then go for manual coding, then integrate it into your physical prototype, and then do a testing. What is the challenge here is, it's time consuming and expensive, because you are dependent on a physical prototype. And later, if you find any kind of error, you have to go back to the requirements, which consumes a lot of time and which will also impact the vehicle development. So that is where model-based design came into picture. What is model-based design? Because to handle this kind of a complexity, it's nothing but a simulation-based design. So instead of a physical prototype, can I use a mathematical model of the vehicle or the system of the vehicle and use it for my entire design cycle? So if I'm going to develop an algorithm for a system, can I have a mathematical model by which I can add more details to the algorithms, test it in my desktop itself, and then later use that particular model itself for developing my software, and later I can port it onto the embedded targets, and then quickly I can test it and reduce the development time that is involved in it. So that is where industry embraced the concept of model-based design. Now I'll just give you a quick overview of what are the steps involved into it, and quickly we'll see two examples which will help you to understand. In today's webinar, due to the shortage of time, I will not be able to go through any demo or any walkthrough of examples in detail of how to build a model and other things. But if you have any questions of how to build models or how do I address something specifically, you can always contact me post the webinar. I will be happy to answer the questions. Okay. So this is where the model-based design starts with, where it starts with the specification. So you have any kind of a system that you want to design. What are the components and algorithms present into it? So you try to quickly make a mathematical model like this, which you can do it with Simulink or Stateflow, and I can directly translate the textual requirements into a graphical specifications. So this is just using all your relational operators, mathematical operations, and create a model of the algorithm. What do you do with this algorithm? You quickly test it with a certain kind of inputs and whether the algorithm is behaving as intended or not. Then what we try to do, after I create my algorithm, I need to test the algorithms in a closed loop also. That is where I might have to create a plant models, which we call it as. Suppose we are doing a motor control algorithm. I can develop my control algorithm. I can test it in the open loop. But to test it in a closed loop, I need to have a mathematical model of a motor. Whether I create it from an equation, I create it from a physical components, or I create it from a data. But you should have a plant model which will capture the dynamic behavior of the system, and I can perform this kind of a closed loop. So that is what we try to do. And after you do that, what is the main thing? The algorithm and model or research purpose will stay on your desktop. But if it has to get into a vehicle, what it has to do? It has to get as a part of deployed onto your embedded targets. So that is where there is a need for generating the code from your model and deploying onto your embedded device. So embedded target, when we talk about, it can be on your C++ environment, it can be in HDL, it can be PLC code. Now, depending on what is your embedded target that you are going to use, should I again rewrite the same algorithms? No, then again it is going to consume the time. So that is where there was a need for automatically generating the code from the models and then deploying onto the embedded targets. So this is where The main idea is, if I write my code myself, whatever the features and how do I optimize my code in manually, you translate that expertise onto the tool by selecting the right settings and making use of the functionalities provided by the tool, and then generate a efficient and a optimized code into it. And that is what is the advantage it gives you is, even before your physical prototypes or vehicles are ready, you will be able to have the confidence that your algorithm is working fine. You will be able to reduce the number of physical prototypes that is built, which cost like crores of money. You'll be able to save that, and you can quickly catch the errors also very early. So you don't need to work for recalls or anything into it. So this is what is the approach that is followed by the industry, and why they are following this. Just to give a magnitude of the work, one ECU to develop for an organization, it will involve like 365 man years kind of stuff. So many people have to work together because it's million lines of code. They have to thoroughly test. So it's a bigger team working across different divisions. So to do all these things, there is a need for a better collaboration, an environment in which you will be able to integrate all this work together and test it across. So that is where whatever we are trying to emphasize, the simulation based design is a widely accepted concept. Now, what is the opportunities ahead for industry, and why as a student I need to look at it, or as a researcher I also need to look at it, and how do I get started? That is what I'll be focusing now. So if we look at it, whatever we saw was more from automotive embedded systems. But what are the 6 innovation mega trends today? As I said, it's software, algorithms, and maths in everything. Math. So what we call it is, it's you are surrounded by algorithms, and everything is becoming a virtual world right now. Also, if you look at it, the situation demands more of virtual and digital transformations. So that means there is a role of more software coming into picture, and Internet of Things. What do we mean by Internet of Things is basically we have mobile, we are connected by devices across, either to the cloud or devices talking to each other, and there are a lot of sensors present into it. And was there any question? Okay, so that is Internet of Things, where there are a lot of mobile devices and a lot of we are connected by lot of data. How do we extract insights from that particular data, and what is the infrastructure that is provided is what we'll be looking at it. And is the embedded processor also becoming more affordable? It is not only very costly, it is also becoming more affordable, like Arduino, Raspberry, and lot more advances happening in that particular space. So how can we leverage that particular platform to also deploy our algorithms? And today it's more of app-based world, and last 2 things is basically data analytics and robotics. If you look at all these things, how do we see that from an embedded system? Again, one thing which I wanted to say is, it's not pure controls that you're going to see. There is going to be a merger of multiple domains of engineering coming into picture to meet the needs of the industry. So what we are hearing is basically a buzzword is all around us on artificial intelligence or AI. So one thing what we have observed is, AI is not only about algorithm. Just taking a data, training a model is not, you will be able to be successful in your particular project. If you have to be successful in your venture with AI, you need to go beyond the data and training an AI model. So that is what, if you look at the workflow, it talks about modeling the AI, and after you model the AI, how do you make that AI model integrate with the system? So that is where again the embedded engineering coming into picture. And once you are comfortable that algorithm is working fine, how can you deploy so that it gets into production, not stay at the prototyping level, it gets into the production, and you will be able to see the full benefits of the AI into it. So this is also one area which the embedded engineers need to be aware of, where there are going to be a lot of challenges. How do I deploy my algorithm onto the embedded platforms? So this, even though it's a challenge, it throws out a lot of opportunities as a engineers, more technological challenges, but it's quite, I would call it as a more exciting phase to be in, where you can know, like, get to know about different embedded devices. How do I take my models? How do I generate optimized code and then take it into my devices? So to give you a practical walkthrough of how it fits into the industry, or it is still more at a technology level, I would take two examples. Okay, so one, let me take an example of a self-driving car. This is a company called as Voyage in US, and there it's a startup, and the main focus for them is to have a self-driving cars. But as you know, like, it is only an evolving concept. They have to prove the concept immediately in a where there is a need. So their main goal was to target the old age homes and the retirement communities in US. What was needed there? So there they have to ensure that these vehicles drive at a certain speeds that is defined in the traffic signboards, and also ensure that they are able to detect the pedestrians. They are able to take the automated cars are able to detect the, I mean, also from a human safety point of view, to ensure that pedestrian safety is of utmost importance there, right? What was main things for them is they have to quickly conceptualize, come from a concept to a system in a very shorter time. And again, they cannot develop things from scratch, because what they didn't have in the hand is not 3 years. They have to develop everything in a 1 year time. So how they can quickly capitalize on this opportunity and then try to prove to the world that the technological that they are the leader in this particular technology. So main thing is they have to look at the software tools across the entire workflow. It is not going to be one software. So as a designer, what you need to know is what are the different softwares that are needed for developing such vehicle. So when you see here, of course, they used MATLAB Simulink for the developing the system models, but then also to have the kind of a platform, the embedded software had also talked to used ROS and also Docker platform. So the question is, how do I take my algorithms, deploy into the ROS node or into the Docker? What is needed? That is also biggest challenge for them. So just to give a an overview of how the block diagram looks like, their main IP was on the AI perception system. So the perception system, you can right now treat it as an algorithm, where they can say, like, based on the data that's coming from the vision sensors or the radar sensors, how do I extract the right information and use it for my object deductions, and then for making my smarter decisions, how can I do it? So that is what AI perception, they develop the algorithms. Now AI perception alone cannot work, right? It has to integrate with the vehicle. So that is where there was a need to integrate with the existing vehicle itself, where there was vehicle control systems and vehicle dynamics present. And then they need to thorough this test perception algorithm thoroughly. Before that, they cannot take it into the actual community, because it will pose a huge danger to the lives, human lives. So that means they have to thorough it, test it thoroughly in the desktop itself. So that is where they also need to simulate that kind of environment and see how their perceptions are behaving. So what they did is they used the model which is already there, which we call it as adaptive cruise control with sensor fusion, and they used it as a reference application, and then they quickly build their particular model. The question, I'm not going into the development of the model, more is after they develop, what was the main challenge? How quickly I can deploy this particular controller alone, this particular piece onto the embedded target. So that was the biggest challenge, and that is where their embedded targets didn't have only accepting C or C++, it also had a ROS environment. So that means some portions of the controller has to go as a ROS nodes, and remaining has to go as a C or a C++. And this, the biggest challenge will be, is it optimized? Will I be able to fit it within the controller architecture I have? They were able to do this with a model-based design as an approach, and they were able to quickly deploy this particular concept in less than 3 months. I can send you the link, share the link to this particular PDF and the white paper. It will be interesting, and if you also pursuing research in the field of automated driving, you have some reference examples which you can refer to and use it as your base for your research. That's one about automated driving, and that's one aspect when we are going to work in automated driving, and that also needs to be successful in the implementation of the algorithm on the design. We need to understand how the embedded system works, how do we optimize the code that is generated. So whether we are going to get it from the manual code or automated code, we should be thorough with which are the what are the best practices to be adopted to generate a optimized code. How do I optimize for a certain architecture? Even if you use the tools, you should have that, you should be strong in that fundamentals. Then only you'll be able to leverage the power of the tools better. Similarly, the other interesting example will be from this is a fusion of two industries between automotive and also the energy industry. So this is what we call it as a smart home. This is in Toyota City of Japan, where they were supposed to do a low carbon homes. What does that mean? Is basically they want to ensure that they come with a concept of a home in which that home can act as a power generator also, and which can use it for selling power to the grids, and it can also buy power from the grids whenever the price is low. So that is also where how do you generate the power? Can we also use the cars which is being parked in my parking garage, which is in ideal condition, and whenever it is in the night, which is not in the driving condition, can I use the battery as my electrical storage system and then try to produce power also? So this is a interesting concept, and this is what has become like what we call it is a fusion of the electrical power system engineering and also the automotive world. And this also you will be seeing more right now with the electrification in place. You'll see a lot of charging infrastructure. The same concepts can be applied when you are going to see that more of electrical vehicles running on the road. How do I design my charging station? Where do I put it? These are the new challenges and opportunities which we will also see in India with a new electrification policy in place. So here in this particular case on the low carbon homes, what was the challenge? The control algorithm becomes more complex. It's no more a PID algorithm. It has to be more adaptive. So that is what I go back to my first slide of how do you make your systems more smarter. So that is what it is supposed to do, is it is supposed to watch out for the fluctuation in the power trading, and then figure out whenever the power price is less, then it has to take a decision on when to use the solar panels in the home, when to use the battery in the cars. So that is where the controller needs to become more smarter. And then how do I deploy this particular control algorithm? Because it is also running an optimization algorithm, and deploying an optimization algorithm is not an easy task because it has a lot of computations, and that itself is a bigger challenge. So having said this, this is how the block diagram looks like. It's more about what we call it as a smart home or a home energy management system. And this is another already in place. If you see, a lot of smart homes concepts are already in place. So this is how it looks like, where you will have a home energy controller, and that is going to act like a master or a human brain and take a decision of when to charge my batteries in my car, when to discharge my batteries in my car, because I cannot just use my car battery and discharge it. When I need my car, I also need to, when I want to go out, I need to ensure that it is ready for driving, right? So that means you are in need for making that kind of a smart decisions. So how does this look like? I'm just skipping the workflow. So the question that came into picture is, we have to deal with a lot of data because you are surrounded with the data, and your controller should always be adaptive to the change in the data, change in the sentiments, and that is where AI comes into picture, where you analyze your data, build machine learning or deep learning models, and once you build that, how do you integrate it with your SimScape power systems or SimScape electrical, right now what we call, and then see that the algorithm is behaving fine. And after doing all these things, you need to deploy your controller onto the embedded devices. What is the right embedded device? How do I look at it? that is a decision as embedded engineer you have to take it at the start of your particular project, right? So these are all interesting examples, interesting phase to be in the. If you ask me, this is the right time to be as an engineer to be in. You are surrounded with a lot of interesting challenges, and it throws out a lot of opportunities. And as a technical folks, will be like the problems and the life cycle of the problems is also short-lived. So this is the best phase to be in actually. So here in this case of Denso, what they did is they use MATLAB as a platform, and they are more a domain engineer. So they were not worried about data science or anything. They used all the apps, and it helped basically turning the engineers to data scientists, and they were able to integrate the world of AI and engineering and realize the benefits of the low energy carbon homes in a shorter time. Okay, this is what quick summary. If you have to look at it, I will be embedded engineer, but I also know what's happening in the mega trends, either it's automated driving or AI. But the biggest challenge is how do you bring and integrate both the pieces of it? And what is the challenge that's going to come from the AI? And how do I understand the challenges and make it deploy onto the systems that we are working on? Now, the question for you will be, if your students if you are a student, how will I get ready to develop these systems? Why should we focus onto it? If you look at, this is a study from NASCAM and also from Niti Aayog. If you look at it, there is a big potential for future high-tech skills. Industry is in need of skilled resources where you can quickly understand the needs and quickly translate that ideas into systems and quickly support in the development time and produce better systems. So how do we be ready for that particular demand? So one thing is the learning is already changed, and I think that's what we could see from Rashmi ma'am's presentation. So you saw a lot of robotics labs present into it. Online learning courses will help. Experiential learning, what we call it, is a project-based learning, and then a collaborative learning in form of student competitions. So these are the key things which you have to really look at beyond classroom learning. How can I take these concepts quickly, apply it on the real-time projects, and I will be able to understand and appreciate the concepts and fundamentals of engineering in better way. So by coming from what we call it as a design thinking methodology, translate your ideas to a realization in a faster way, right? So there are, if you are working on a low-cost hardware, these links are available from Mathworks. You can look at it, where there are a lot of low-cost servers. Whether you are working with Arduino, you are working with ThinkSpeak, you can translate that algorithms, and if you're comfortable with MATLAB and Simulink, you can quickly, MATLAB and Simulink can talk to this hardware actually. I'm skipping on. And if you are interested about the Maker Zone, I would encourage all of the students to visit the Maker Zone and try to get started with this project-based learning with that particular project and also contribute to it. Coming to the end, so what it means as a engineer, as a budding engineer, as a future industrial industry experts, what is the need of the hour? There is a need for a T-shaped engineer. What does that mean? You should have one, you should be deep in one particular area, at the same time spread your breadth across multiple areas, which we call it as a multi-domain skills. So you can be a T-shaped engineer or you can be a pie-shaped engineer. Suppose as a controls engineer, I'm very happy or proud to be a controls engineer. So I have my depth in control engineer. But at the same time, I should also know what's happening in the sensing field, computing field, communication field. That will allow you to ensure that whatever system you are developing will be able to cater the needs. You'll be able to address the needs of the other domain engineers and contribute to the needs of the industry and ensure that the system that we are developing is efficient and it's right the first time. So these are some of the getting started resources. If you are whatever I covered in, if you want to know, like, is there any tutorials, you can look into this kind of on-ramp materials, and this will be a good starting point. I'll share the slides later with Amrita team. Finally, what are the 3 key points? currently technologies are fusing together, the industries are coming together. So no more we will say it is automotive, it is semiconductor. Right now, the need for the R is all the technologies are fusing to the industries to come together. So Apple is developing cars, Google is developing car, cars are developing into the connectivity space and mobile space. So basically what we are trying to do is this fusion needs industries, companies and educations to come together also. So that is the need of the R, which is said T-shaped engineer. And to be ready for industry, you need to also expand your domains, what you are learning, and try to move from theory to the project-based learning so that you will be able to be ready for the needs of the industry. And for which the foundation for this fusion and transformation is modeling and simulation. This we cannot skip because system-based thinking is the need of the hour. Whatever engineering we are studying, we should ensure that we are leveraging and we have our experience in the system-based thinking, which we call it as a modeling and simulation. To end the note, we cannot relax that I'm out of my college or out of my study, I got into industry. Never learning never stops. The only skill that will be important is skill of learning new skills, right? So keep learning, and that will continue, and that will be the need of the hour, and that is how we can enjoy our work. And with that, I thank Amrita for providing opportunity for me and to present my thoughts, and wishing all the budding engineers all the best and all successful in their career. If you want to reach out, these are my coordinates. You can reach out through email or LinkedIn or Twitter. These are my coordinates. Now I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So we have got a couple of questions here over here. And students, if you have any questions, you can put up in the chat window. The session is open now. And the questions what we have received is first question. Could you please tell us what are the software needed to learn, like MATLAB and all?
So MATLAB itself is a software. So as I have provided in the links, there is certain links called MATLAB on-ramp. It will be available in mathos.com/academia. If you go there, it's a 2 hours free tutorials. That will be good good starting materials for you. And not just MATLAB, you will have deep learning on-ramp and other machine learning on-ramp materials, which can be a good starting place for you to get started.
Yeah, moving on to the second one. Sir, is there any chance of automotive cars being brought into action in populous country like India? Well, there are a lot of companies. Well, a lot of companies working in India. What are the distinct challenges involved?
That's a very good question. It's usually comes from industry. So yeah, see, that's what I said. In automated driving, there are different levels of automation. Now, every time when we are looking at like level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, up to level 5. Level 2 and level 3 are like advanced drive assistance systems and a little bit of automation coming into the picture. So there is always a scope for automated driving systems to come into the prevalent use. Already you are seeing it, like a reverse park assist is there, which is like a L2.5, which we call it as a still automated driving system. Now autonomous emergency braking is going to be a mandatory in all commercial vehicles shortly. So that means all the trucks and buses will have the autonomous emergency braking, which will be like a level 3 system, which is still automated driving or autonomous system. So you will see that in use. Fully automated driving is more from a concept point, and that even industry is not clear. It is more from a technology point. It is more for challenging each one of how do we meet or be a leader in the technology. That's what everybody is doing. But definitely it is throwing a lot of opportunities. It is going to, like, if you ask us, L3 and L3.5 will be systems will be coming more and more in the upcoming cars.
Yeah, last one. What is your view on computer vision incorporated in electrical cars for autonomous control?
Sorry, I missed the question. Can you repeat?
Yeah. What is your view on computer vision incorporated in electrical cars for autonomous control?
It's the same actually. So it's like when we are talking about autonomous control itself, we cannot take the vision sensors. Sensors are going to be the eyes, and eyes are the vision. I mean, what do you call that? We are going to replace human by the sensors, right? So it will be more of it's going to be the key portion, the perception portion of the automated car, and whether it is electrified or I mean, all most of the automated cars also will be electrified. That is where it will be easier for the integration. So from that perspective, electrified we can take it, keep it separate. There will be a relation between the computer vision and automated driving, which plays a key role. Vision, radar, lidar, all are key components of an automated driving system. The only question is, it's not about only designing sensor, it's also about the data that is thrown by these particular sensors. How do we fuse them together, and how do we get the right information for making decisions? That's the biggest challenge.
And can we simulate the control algorithm for the low carbon homes if we have some prior knowledge in fuzzy systems?
Yeah, I mean the whatever I showed you, the low carbon homes, there is an equivalent model. First they made a mathematical model for that, and also we have some in our examples also smart home energy management system, where we can simulate the home like a loads. Mathematically you can model different types of loads, you can model different types of the panels. So all these things can be mathematically done, and that is what they also done. First created a simulation model of it, and then they try different types of algorithm. Fuzzy is one of that. You can try fuzzy, you can try neural network, you can try deep learning, you can try any kind of optimization algorithm. Yeah, you are free to try. That's the beauty of this modeling world. There is no one control algorithm. You can try all the different types of concepts, explore trade-offs, and figure out which is right one for your application.
And so, are there any courses related to automotive embedded which are affordable, extensive knowledge?
See, right now it is more like embedded systems is the key thing, right? From there, when you're studying itself, you will have the examples of embedded is like the branch which will try to be like the core or fundamentals, which I told you in the T, right? And from there, depending on whatever the applications, it's not. It is more to understand that particular system. I'm going to develop for embedded for automotive. I need to understand what is that different systems I'm trying to look at. You just need to understand how does that system behave, and then how I can be able to match it across the day. So there are some courses like automotive electronics and other things available, but it's not necessary. I mean, I'm not like what courses that I'm not very clear where it is offered into it. I think you may have to Google it and find out. But if you ask me, controls or embedded is kind of the fundamental, and through which we can span it to any kind of needs of the industries.
How is that possible to generate code from model-based design to integrate embedded systems?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I didn't cover it in detail today, but the thing is, what happens is we have the code generation tools. What it does is basically from the model, it will understand how the blocks are connected, and then there will be options for the code generation. What kind of a processor are you using, and what is the level of optimization you want to do it? So the same way, if I have to manually code it, that level certain capabilities would have gone into the code generators. And whenever I'm going to develop generate a code, you need to select what kind of an architecture, what do you want to do. You are mainly generating code for the application or the algorithm. You will be definitely, there will be a handwritten code for the architecture, the device driver aspect of it. And once you generate it, there is a procedure for integrating it with the architecture of your code and ROS, so the operating system, RTAS, and schedulers into it. So there is a workflow for it. If anyone is interested, later I can send the links for it, or white paper or videos onto that actually. But you need to know that why this autocode came into picture is applications and the algorithms is the one which will keep on changing, and that only we have to fast quickly generate code out of it. Whereas the architecture and other device drivers, most of the times it remains constant for a platform. So that's where once it is fixed, they will automatically generate code and they'll integrate it and do the testing. And another thing is also not about code generation alone. It's not about automatic code generation. It's also about the testing of the code along with the model. So there will be like different levels of testing in the simulation world that will ensure that your quality of the code is high and there is no error. And that is what most of the authorities today, what we call it is a functional safety, where every car or every flight has to certify that this software is bug free, so that after clearing only you will be able to deploy it in your production programs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for that questions. It was all thought provoking. And yeah, if you have some more questions, please drop me. I mean, you can contact me on LinkedIn. So with that, I stop sharing and over to you.
Hello everybody, I am Subramaniam, a pass out batch of 2018 Triple department. I currently work at PRDC. It's a core company of my own department, and I am a systems engineer over there. I do studies about the renewable energies right now. Amrita University is, they contributed in many ways for their subjects what they've taught and the kind of courses and the curriculum. This college is been run by a Mutt in Kerala, so they also involved in a lot of activities outside. And then I was also a part of all these, so it helps you to be socially aware and then respond to those issues as well. New batch of students, please come here, study, and also learn about your studies from outside as well. It's not just purely books. Please have some knowledge about the outside industries as well in your studies.
Thank you, sir. So good evening, everyone. So it's a privilege for me to extend a vote of thanks to all those who have contributed in one way or the other to make this webinar a successful one. So I express my sincere thanks to the speaker in today's session, Mr. R. Vijayalayan from NATWork, for accepting our invitation and for giving such an informative presentation. Thank you very much, sir. I thank our management and principal, Dr. S.R. Nagaraja, for motivating us to conduct such technical events. Our HOD, Dr. M.R. Rashmi ma'am, has always been the driving force and she has been behind this whole process. Thank you, ma'am. I thank our coordinator, Ms. Nitya ma'am, for taking all the efforts in arranging this webinar. I thank Nalini ma'am from CSE department and Suchitra ma'am from the admissions team for guiding us in organizing this event. Most importantly, I wish to thank the student coordinators, Jagdish, Srija and Pavan for all their support. So we thank our department faculty, UG and PG students for rendering all the help required. Last but not the least, I thank the wonderful participants who have turned up today for the wonderful session. We thank you very much for the patience and cooperation you have extended. Thank you one and all. We look forward to see you in future webinars organized by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. For any queries regarding MTech admissions to Power Electronics or Embedded Systems program, kindly contact our MTech admission coordinators, Dr. Anand and Dr. Mamata ma'am. So I'm sharing their email IDs for your reference. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Surekha ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vijay sir, and thank you, Surekha ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you all. Thank you, ma'am. All have a nice evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.